Ladies and gentlemen, kicking off our first keynote, please welcome the Global Head Products and Solutions at Visa, Vicky Bindra, and the co-founder and CEO of Chain, Adam Ludwin.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started.
Thank you, everyone. It's always a pleasure and pride to initiate and start such a huge sort of gathering like this. I feel very honored to be given the responsibility. My name is Vicky Bindra, and I head the Global Products and Solutions for Visa. The reason I'm here today is because we want to talk to you about a service or a product we've been working on for over a year, and it's on international B2B payments, a part which we thought was a big pain point in the industry. So it's all about how do you get payments from point A, let's say in the US, to point B in Japan, easier, faster, in a more transparent manner, so that we remove a pain point in the industry. Let me start by sort of just talking a little bit about what we do and what our mission is. Not that most of you don't know, all of you will know, but sometimes when we make small changes, either to our system or product set or how we define sort of various elements with either merchants or the banks, it can actually have a significant impact on how the goods and services move through, right? The objective being, how can you make it easier, faster, and in a way safer as we do that whole thing in the network. So for all of you that are still doubting EMV and are naysayers, just be patient. It's the right road is yet to come on EMV, and we'll get to the right place in sort of near-term period of time. But one of the pain points that we looked at actively was something that we thought for the last 10 years really hadn't been looked at, and that was really international B2B payments for both small businesses and large corporates. And hence the effort today, or hence what we're going to announce today, is really an effort to solve that particular part of the problem. I'll just present this just to show you sort of how international payments seem clumsy today. Right, let's first start with the dimension of time. Right, typically for a supplier to get his payment once the customer has agreed to make the payment is a matter of several days, if not a week. Plus, there is no transparency over sort of how much he or she is being charged exactly. When exactly will he receive the payment, other than getting calls from the buyers, have you gotten it yet? And the whole process that they go through in terms of managing their cash flow is less than ideal. And think of this in the complexity of if you then don't receive your payment, or if the payment goes into some sort of a flux. You can talk about weeks to solve that issue, and really an uncomfortable place for both buyers and suppliers in transacting international trade. On the other side, let's look at what's happened to the environment. From a compliance and regulation standpoint, that has really increased complexity. That's not getting easier for any one of us day to day. Secondly, trade has just exploded. Right? If you think of trade 1 month before, 1 year before, 5 years before, 20 years before, it's just exploded beyond any level of sort of, prediction at that point of time what trade would be. And therefore, you have an archaic system trying to support a trade infrastructure that has really grown in leaps and bounds, causing huge pressure on the environment and causing huge pressure on the suppliers as well as buyers. And by the way, during all of this process, business expectations have risen. They've not declined. Like, we want things faster. We want to do last-minute purchases. If I'm a big seller in the US, I want to think about the latest fashions and ensure that I can get the latest products at the whim of sort of my fancy at that point in time, because I want to retain my consumers, which are used to instantaneism as sort of a part and rule of their life. So we thought, let's compare it to the physical industry. Right, so we started looking at the physical industry, and you think about, let's say, just UPS packages. From the time it leaves the warehouse to the time it reaches the customer, you can track it every second. Think about emails and what you can do in terms of sending information. That is instant. And then you look at innovations there. You think about, okay, even though it's sort of physical goods have expanded, it still takes a couple of days for the goods to reach. And then out comes loop commerce that really separates fulfillment from the delivery, and suddenly delivery of your goods is instant, even though fulfillment might take a couple of days behind that. And then you start pulling back and thinking about the pain points in international B2B trade and said, things have really not moved. Things have not moved to a point where we can feel more efficient, we can feel that it's faster, it's better, and we as the network, so we as financial institutions, have done some real meaningful work behind it to change it. Hence, from Visa, we are looking at 3 or 4 different ways to solving this problem with help of many partners to really try and identify how do we get to a better place in this ecosystem. Hence, Visa B2b Connect. So what is Visa B2b Connect? Quite simply, it's a method of doing exactly that, making it simpler, faster, secure between financial institutions like banks all over the world. And we've tried to look at this now for over a year. We've worked with many of you or many of the banks here for a better part of a year, and we're going to go live in terms of our pilot in early 2017, and hence we thought it was an appropriate moment here to announce what we're going to do. As we think about both suppliers on one side and the financial institutions on one side, we thought from a financial institution standpoint, if you can remove the burden of nostro accounts, messages separate from the actual payment settlement, which is completely different from the messaging, try to make it instant at one time, and therefore be able to offer services to their small businesses or large corporations that was meaningfully different. And from the customer side, whether they could get something that was, again, faster, more secure, and very transparent in terms of what they were being charged and how they were going to get delivery, and if there was a problem, what they would do. That's what inspired sort of the whole thing that we're going to announce today, or we're announcing today. Behind this were 2 things that we were very clear on. One is we wanted to give these free transactions really a platform of scale. That's what we do well, that's what we understand well, and that was really our core objective here. Secondly, this is going to be keeping banks at the center. Our DNA is working with financial institutions, and our whole purpose here is to work with financial institutions that makes it far more efficient for the system. So therefore, the 4 elements that we wanted to get at is, one is instant, that the payments would be instant, and there would be a confirmation when you send the amount, as well as a confirmation when it was received at the other end. Secondly, is completely transparent. You knew exactly when you were sending it, what would the time it would take, which is instant, as well as any charges whatsoever in sending it. In terms of security, it's something we pride ourselves on in keeping a Visa network that's completely secure. No different in this transaction, it's completely secure. Trusted, considering that all the parties in this are financial institutions, that there's a degree of compliance and security and trust that we felt was quite important for large money transfers around the world. All of this sounds good, but we can't do this without a lot of you in the room. So many banks who are in the room and all over the world, we welcome you to join this service, to join what we are about to announce so that this can really create a full bed of transactions around the world and creates liquidity pools of foreign exchange transactions around the world that makes fulfillment so much easier for the receiving bank and therefore the receiving customers. So now let me stop and talk a little bit about the how. I've just told you the what without telling you how. We, over the last few months or last couple of years, have actually worked with Chain, and Chain is our partner in trying to figure out how do we use elements of blockchain technology to come up with a service that's far more elegant and that meets all the 4 points that I mentioned before. I knew I wouldn't do justice to that dialogue, so I'm now about to call the CEO of Chain, Adam Ludwin, to come and tell you about the technology behind the service. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vicky. Good evening, everyone. Vicky, it's a privilege to be sharing the stage with you and to be working with David, Ajit, Amanda, and the other folks on the Visa team. And it's very apt that we're here today together at Money 2020 because, as you know, it was 2 years ago to the day that Chain and Visa met at this conference. So thank you, Anil and Jonathan and everyone else for organizing it. I am Adam Ludwin, co-founder, CEO of Chain. Chain is a blockchain technology company, and we partner with organizations like Visa to build and deploy blockchain networks. And I want to tell you a little bit more about what that means and how it applies to Visa B2b Connect. The most important thing to appreciate about a blockchain is this. It enables a new medium for money, a natively digital medium for money itself. To understand a little bit more about what that means, let's look briefly at a couple of other industries outside of payments. For example, music. The medium of music has actually changed a few times, from live to recorded, from recorded to digital but downloadable, and then from downloadable to streaming. It's always music, but different mediums enable new services. Or publishing, that is text, right? So text was written word, and then it became bookmaking. That was a huge medium shift. And then from bookmaking to the web, another massive one, and now to mobile. Again, always text, but very different mediums, very different services transforming the market that the medium is in. And finally, communication. So our voice. This is a real photo recently unearthed. This was how we communicated, proximately, right? We couldn't move our voice over distance until we figured out, actually, we could with wires, and we built the modern telephone system, the switch line system. Of course, today, our voice increasingly is going over the internet, another new medium shift for our voice, and enabling new services with voice over IP, like video and more advanced conference calling. So always our voice, always text, always music, new mediums enabling new services that were just not possible before. So let's look back at money. It turns out the medium of money has changed throughout human history, from precious metals to certificates for those precious metals that ultimately became government-issued fiat currencies, to the centralization or immobilization of those currencies in ledger systems that allowed us to use our currency over distance, much more efficient for transacting over distance, but unfortunately has now kind of run up against the limits of what it can do in terms of international and digital. To this new medium shift, yes, the medium of money is changing once again, and it's happening right now. And this new digital medium is often referred to as distributed ledger technology. And that's a reference to the system we have now, the centralized ledgers. But I actually find it's helpful not to think about what we have now, but to think about what came just before it, which is to say cash. Now, cash is, to use an old-fashioned term, a physical bearer instrument. What is a bearer instrument? Well, cash is a bearer instrument. So what's interesting about bearer instruments is ownership of one is defined by control. So you all know I own this $20 because I am holding it. That's it. And if I want to use this $20, I can come over here to Vicky. This is how we win customers, by the way. hand the $20 to Vicky, and not only is the payment instant, not only is the payment direct and peer-to-peer, but the settlement of it is instantaneous. Nothing else happens. We're done. That's the experience we want, but in the digital realm. We want those with digital bearer instruments. We want to have this instant settlement, but over distance, on the internet, with an international payment or an e-commerce payment. By the way, since we're in Vegas, poker chips, they're also bearer instruments. And if everyone looks under their seat right now, just kidding. So what is a blockchain? OK, I've described what it enables, but what is it actually? Well, it turns out it's not so fancy. It's basically just a new type of database, one that is shared among counterparties in a network, and critically, where those counterparties directly control the funds on that ledger. How? Through cryptography. So a blockchain really, at essence, is applying cryptographic principles to financial services. And that's why we say that on a blockchain, electronic records, they start to behave like bearer instruments, like this transaction that Vicky and I just had. So here's a blockchain network, and we know it's a blockchain because there are keys, and each institution on this network has a private cryptographic key. And each key corresponds to what is called a public address, or you can think of as a safety deposit box. In fact, I find it's helpful to think of a blockchain as a digital network of safety deposit boxes. That's what the ledger is. So if an institution wishes to send funds to another institution, they take their key, unlock their box, sign the transaction cryptographically, which creates an immutable or unchangeable update to that shared ledger, and then that moves the funds or the value directly to the other institution. And that's what we mean by digital bearer instrument. Now, that institution has a key, and you'll recall that it corresponds to that box. So those funds are now part of that institution's control, under their control, and they can now send them on to the next. So this is how we get instant movement of funds in a digital context. This is that new medium I was describing. And as I said, new mediums give rise to new products. And we're here today, of course, because of just one of those new products, which is Visa B2b Connect. And so on this architecture, which is a federated, permissioned blockchain that Visa is operating with its financial institution clients, but on behalf of corporate customers at the end of the day. Fundamentally, this is about allowing a business in the United States with Bank of America to pay another business in Singapore with DBS instantly, and not having to leverage the correspondent banking network that has the problems we've described. So to summarize what we have today, the status quo looks like this. The only thing digital is actually a message. We send electronic instructions between institutions, and they trigger a whole rigmarole of steps, from recording to processing to clearing and batching, reconciling, settling. And eventually, as Vicky mentioned, a few days later, and at some undefined cost, the value will transfer. That's no good. What we want is we want to collapse the middle. We want value to move directly. We want the digital thing to be the value itself, so that when it is transferred, as we saw in the previous example, it's final, just like cash. If at this point you're wondering, because you've been following, say, the blockchain industry for the last couple of years, well, what blockchain technology is actually underpinning this? It would be a good question. In fact, there are many, many questions around blockchain technology. Is it scalable? Is it ready in terms of compliance? What is the consensus model? Is the data private, et cetera? And at Chain, we've been asking these questions also. For the last 2 years, as it happens. We've been trying to figure out what are the problems that the financial industry uniquely needs to solve right now. We've been prototyping different blockchain architectures and features to map against those problems, launching lots and lots of tests with partners, and then taking that learning and funneling it back into the next set of tests. And that 2-year process has been, a really great learning experience. It's been driven by Visa and several other of our partners. And our goal collectively, to be super clear, is not to introduce a new cryptocurrency, but rather to apply these principles to the financial infrastructure that we rely on today to make existing currencies and securities and loyalty points and other financial instruments move much more efficiently between people, businesses, and institutions. And it's culminated in the chain protocol, which is a blockchain architecture that is specifically for issuing and transferring financial assets on permissioned blockchain networks in a way that has a scalable data model as well as consensus model, and ensures the privacy of data and the security of both the assets and the participants on the network. And this is a lot more than just a concept. This is a lot more than just a proposal. This is a lot more than just a white paper. The chain protocol is implemented today in a piece of flagship software which is called Chain Core. And it is Chain Core which organizations run to either launch a new network or connect to an existing one. So both Visa and the participating institutions will run this software. And here's a preview of just the interface up on the screen behind me. So if you're interested in learning more about Visa B2b Connect, and I hope many of you are, we have something special to share with you, which is that at the Chain booth for the rest of the week, Visa and Chain have assembled a demonstration of this service. You can come by the Chain booth, and folks from Chain and Visa will be there to walk you through how it works and show you what it's all about. You're also welcome to reach out to Chain or to Visa at the addresses listed here. And let me just conclude by thanking Money 2020 once more on behalf of Visa and Chain, and Visa for their partnership and this exciting announcement. Thank you so much.